of decadence under the PPP regime. Young Africans were yearning, who are the African leaders that will continue the African struggle? Young Africans were asking for the Nelson Mandelas, the Kwame Nkrumahs, the Amilcar Cabrals, the Stephen Bikos. And here we are, the president that we have in this country. We believe, as vanguards of the July 22nd revolution, represents the younger generation of African leaders who would address the needs and aspirations of their people.
Babukar Kamara, Grts.
We will be back with news from outside the Gambia after this break. Welcome back. Human rights organizations are up in arms with authorities in Niger over the extradition of Colonel Muammar Gaddafi's son, Saidi of Libya. Gaddafi Jr. was granted asylum on humanitarian grounds at the height of the rebellion that ended his father's 40-year-plus rule. We have more in this report.
Members of a Libyan militia made up of former rebels, the Tripoli Revolutionaries Brigade, celebrated the decision by Niger to turn over Saidi Gaddafi, a son of the late dictator Muammar Gaddafi, to Libyan authorities. He is seen here in jail in Tripoli, kneeling on a mattress while one of his jailers shaves his head and beard. Libya had repeatedly called for his extradition from Niger, which had granted him asylum since 2011 on humanitarian grounds, saying it did not believe he would get a fair trial in Libya. Several human rights organizations denounced the decision to hand him over. Niger and Cameroon adhere to the Geneva Convention. So we would have preferred that the authorities in Niger communicate this news directly to us in Niger, but not the manner in which we heard about it, which was by international channels. We are very angry about that. 40-year-old Saidi Gaddafi fled across the Sahara Desert to Niger during the 2011 uprising that saw rebels capture and kill his father, ending his 4-decade dictatorship. His 3 brothers were killed during the uprising. Saidi was best known as the head of Libya's Football Federation. Interpol accuses him of misappropriating properties through force and armed intimidation during that time. His extradition was commented on in the press. Libya continues to house influential members of rebel groups, and they can cause problems for us all along the border. We cannot risk angering the new leaders in Libya. It is part of geopolitical strategy. The Justice Minister in Niger refused to comment on Saidi Gaddafi's extradition to Libya. Around 30 senior Gaddafi regime officials are believed to have entered Niger at the same time as Saidi, but the authorities in Niamey have not said how many remain in the country.
Tens of thousands of Venezuelans, led by President Nicolas Maduro, have been commemorating the first anniversary of the death of their charismatic former leader, Hugo Chavez. Elsewhere in Caracas, the violent protest against record inflation, rampant crime, and a chronic shortage of basic like bread continue. Details in this report.
Shots rang out at 4:15 on Wednesday afternoon to mark the precise time Hugo Chavez died a year ago. A series of ceremonies were organized to pay tribute to the former president of Venezuela. His successor, Nicolas Maduro, launched the day's commemorative events.
Hugo Chavez was, without a shadow of a doubt, the greatest defender of democracy, of the political life of the country, since our republic was founded 200 years ago.
This military museum is the final resting place of the former commander. His mother, Elena Chavez, has gathered there with the heads of state of neighboring countries. The Bolivian Evo Morales and the Nicaraguan Daniel Ortega. After the religious ceremony, a military procession. Dozens of tanks, troops and helicopters brandishing the national flag before crowds of Venezuelans.
We haven't forgotten Comandante Chavez. He is present in our memory, though he disappeared physically a year ago, and we will always hold him in our hearts.
In this area of the capital also, Chavez is still present. Some followers of the regime walk for miles each day to pray in the chapel and to pay tribute to the leader of the revolution.
For me, I cried a lot for him, more than for my family.
The day's tributes were, however, underscored with tension, notably in the east of Caracas, where hundreds of students and members of the opposition have been demonstrating to denounce record-breaking inflation, insecurity and police violence.
We must continue to demonstrate. We must get rid of this government. You know, I don't have any children yet, but I want some one day. I don't want them to live in a dictatorial country that is repressive in the eyes of the rest of the world.
Since the beginning of the movement a month ago, 18 people have been killed and at least 260 others wounded in the demonstrations.
Military sites in Crimea remain surrounded by armed men, so-called self-defense forces, who said with Russia. And there are concerns violence may erupt as tempers flare. CNN's Ben Widerman went to a key military building in Sebastopol, where a strange but tense standoff has been unfolding.
Provocateur, shouts this woman outside the Ukrainian Navy headquarters in Sevastopol. This blonde woman, the object of the anger, has come with her daughter, Irina. Her act of provocation, to bring food to her husband inside. Since last week, pro-Russian volunteers, members of a self-appointed civil defense force, have blocked the entrance to the headquarters, backed up by masked, armed men in green combat fatigues, presumably Russian troops. What provocation, she asks? It's soup and meatballs. They accuse her of being paid to make trouble. I'm here to give them food, she replies, because they're hungry. No one is feeding them. They can't go in or out. We had come here to attend a press conference called by the newly appointed head of the Ukrainian Navy, whose authority apparently ends at the front gate of his headquarters. There was no press conference. The pro-Russian civilians wouldn't allow journalists through.
For us, that's a minor inconvenience, but the fact that access is barred to this base is a much more serious problem for others.
Across the street, wives and mothers wave to those holed up inside. Antonina Zaklikovskaya is hoping to see her 30-year-old son, Victor, an officer. Don't you think, as a mother, my soul is in pain, she asks? I haven't seen my son in so long. A fleeting glimpse is the best she can get for now. On the phone, she tells me, he keeps saying, "Mama, don't worry." Also stopped from entering with supplies was Alexander Kovalenko of the Sevastopol Red Cross. There are no problems with food, this man tells him. Anyone who wants to eat can go home. No Red Cross supplies were allowed in. Almost every attempt to slip something to the men inside was stymied. Irina and her mother weren't allowed to deliver the soup and meatballs. They'll try again tomorrow. Ben Wiedemann, CNN, Sevastopol, Crimea.
A quick reminder of the day's top stories. President Jammeh has said that his administration will safeguard the judiciary in its dispensation of justice based on the laws of the land. Food security experts have gathered under the auspices of the Agriculture Ministry to strengthen their assessment skills. Authorities in Niger have caved into pressure and extradited Saidi Gaddafi, son of former Libyan leader Colonel Muammar Gaddafi, to his home country. And dead but not forgotten, Venezuelans have been holding solemn ceremonies to remember former President Hugo Chavez, who died a year ago. That was all in this edition of the news. Thanks for the pleasure of your